racing for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series Sunday. The twisting Infineon Raceway course in the California wine country was conquered by a West Coast kid who wasn't really one of the pre-race favorites.
Here they are side by side, Casey Kane and Tony Stewart. The green flag is out on the outside. Kane gets a good jump.
Casey Kane pulls away from Tony Stewart.
Kane begins to accelerate. Second gear, third gear, fourth gear. He's pulling away from Tony Stewart.
Casey Kane wins the Dodge Save Mart 350.
Casey Kane held off Tony Stewart through 4 late double file restarts for the win Sunday at Sonoma, his first on a road course. Stewart kept his lead in the championship with a second-place effort, last to third for Marcos Ambrose, while Juan Pablo Montoya breaks into the top 12 in points with a 6th-place result. The final result shuffled by the usual late race road course jamming, that, the hard-to-follow strategies, the restarts, and more, reviewed by our roundtable panel next on NASCAR Now.
NASCAR Now is presented by The Home Depot.
And we welcome you to the Home Depot Garage Studios and the Wild Wild West edition of the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable. Casey Kane was not the pre-race pick of a lot of folks before Sunday's race, but he took home the trophy. We'll talk about how all that happened with our roundtable panel. Ray Evernham, Mike Wallace, Ricky Craven with us today. How many of you had Casey on your fantasy teams for Sunday?
Yeah. Oh, I did for sure.
Okay. I didn't because I didn't do the fantasy thing. Let's begin our show with how Casey Kane won the race. Lined up 5th in the field of 43 for a 110-lap go on the 11-turn, 1.99-mile road course. Ran pretty solidly in the opening segment of the race. Stays on track here at lap 22 when many others pitted, setting his strategy for the day. Gets the lead for the first time when Tony Stewart pits at lap 31. Then gives up the lead for a green flag stop, losing a little bit of time, exiting about his only misstep of the day.
Yeah, he just saw the car leaving pit road, which is easy to do on a road course because of the transmission, but that's the best time to do it. He had all day to make that up, didn't lose a lot of time.
Get going. Okay, there we go. He's running 34th after the stops, moves back up to 19th by the time this caution waves for debris, lap 54. Pits under the yellow at lap 55, drops into 24th. Then guys on the other strategy, like leader Denny Hamlin, begin improving Casey's track position by making their own pit stops. This one under green at lap 67. Denny was the leader there. Casey would stay out till lap 71. He's up to 2nd at that point. Makes his last stop of the race. Comes off of pit road here in 12th position. Then gets a break. You always want to pit before the caution comes out on a road course. Well, the caution came out just after he pitted for that. Bobby Labonte spun around. Those who had not stopped yet, like Robbie Gordon, they're in a little bit of trouble. For the restart, Casey's alongside Scott Speed. He makes on the restart what would be the winning pass.
Well, definitely the double file restart, winning pass, drives away from him. Sounds like they did it on pit road, Alan.
Yeah, it was a pretty good day for the pit crew as well. 4 times in the remaining laps, a caution sets up a double file restart. Each time Kane chooses the outside lane, putting Tony Stewart inside of him. Each time Kane makes it work, including a lap 111 restart for a green-white checker.
He knew what he wanted. He wanted to be on the outside, the right side, protect himself going up the hill. He was exceptional on restarts all day.
And Casey Kane gets his first road course victory.
To qualify good, the last 2 years here, 3 years here, and then race really strong today was the first time that I've been able to pull that off. Our whole Budweiser team did just a perfect job today. Our car felt great. It turned awesome. It had great forward drive, and I was able to race with some of the fastest guys throughout the race, and we were able to win. So, yeah, I'm excited as can be to win a race at Infineon.
We drove up through the field on the tires and, got up near the front, and then when the pit stop stuff cycled out, we were right there in the front. And, so it all worked out. It was, we didn't know what was going to happen. We were sitting on the box, so we had no idea how it was going to work out, but we said, well, we'll do it, try to stick to our plans, hit our window that we're wanting to hit, and hope it works out, and it did, luckily.
It was one of those picture-perfect days. They did everything exactly what they needed to do to win the race. And, you get maybe 3 or 4 of those chances a year. That's really, you might win more races than that, but a lot of times you got to overcome other circumstances. But they had everything lined up, and what can you say when everything goes right in a short day? Then that's basically what it was today. And hopefully it's the beginning of something else, but it's just another day. We've got to get ready now and go to New Hampshire and back this one up.
So Casey ended a 37-race winless streak Sunday at Sonoma, which is the latest in a list of drivers that ended droughts in 2009. Check it out. Jeff Gordon snapped a 47-race streak at Texas. Mark Martin ended a 97-race slide when he won at Phoenix. So Casey's never finished better than 14th on a road course until Sunday. So why or why not was this win a surprise?
Well, it was a surprise because I don't think people expected him to win that road race, but they know he's a good road racer because he has started on the pole, he has qualified well, but they have struggled with finishing between breaks and other things happening.
Well, I think it's a surprise just because that whole organization has sounded like it's been in a little bit of a, I don't want to use turmoil, but not just totally settled with the Chrysler deal and, financial issues that's been reported. They had 3 cars, 3 of the top 4.
Yeah.
3 of their 4 in the top 10.
And because the numbers don't lie, right? I mean,
yeah. 14th was his best.
Exactly, and he was at his best yesterday. Boy, he looked great.
And you were reacting to something that Richard Petty said just a second ago.
Yeah, he's exactly right. Richard Petty said it's so difficult to have a perfect day, and when you do, you have to capitalize on it. And Ray, Mike, how many times do you give those away, right? Things are going so well, you have to capitalize on it, and they did.
Read Kyle Busch Nationwide Series 2009. All right, the restarts. 4 times in the final stretch of the race, Casey had to pick inside lane, outside lane. He chose the outside lane into the left-hand turn 1, but he kind of knew what he was looking for.
He did. He knew his car could accelerate good. You heard him talk about having a little bit different first gear. And turn 1 doesn't really have a lot of speed yet, so he knew he could be on the outside, but it would put him on the inside for turn 2, which is higher speed and much more critical to get up the hill.
And that was his strength. On right-handers, he was the best in the field. And late in the race, it really showed up into turn 7 and off of turn 10, which is a good passing zone. At the end of the race with 10 to go, and I'm watching Tony try to make a charge, he was so good off of 10, he didn't have a chance.
And here's something that impressed me, Mike. If restarts are opportunities for a driver to make a mistake, spin the tires, miss a gear, do something, and oh, by the way, with Tony Stewart next to him, flawless.
Casey Kane did a perfect job. I mean, he didn't spin a tire, didn't run up over the curb. I think the asset he did have, though, was Tony Stewart next to him. Tony raced him really clean. If he would have changed that, put Marcus Ambrose up there first to win, it might have been a little bit more challenging, but you can't take away what Casey did. It was great.
Tony very respectful in the way he dealt with Casey.
I think he did. I think he was an admirable gentleman at that point, a racer. I mean, he realized Casey got just a little jump on him, left him go. He raced Montoya kind of hard. Stewart did. Got back by him, and by that time, Casey was gone on all the restarts.
All of those things we described, and also throw a few shifts in there.
Yeah.
Well, and Casey was very complimentary to Tony, not only the way he raced him when the green flag came out, but how he positioned him under caution. Tony did not force Casey to run up in the loose rubber, get a bunch of junk on his tires. He gave him his real estate on the racetrack.
That's an interesting point, too, because now, basically the race is single file around there. Now you're going to double up. Somebody's going to be on the dirty line. That's a drag racing term. We haven't heard that much in NASCAR.
Well, I think you will now with the double file restarts. And you'll hear the dirty line thing. Those guys are open wheel racers. They have raced a lot in open wheel sprint cars and things. And I think the respect factor came from that they're good friends. Tony's been a great mentor to Casey. And it was, there was a smile on Tony's face. And I don't know, he doesn't like to lose, but I think in his heart it felt good to see Casey win.
If I got to give one up, that's a guy I'll give one up to. Let's talk about Tony Stewart's race for just a minute, and a couple other guys that had good days. Tony, the championship leader, started 4th, took the lead when Kyle Busch pitted at lap 28, gave it up for his own stop at lap 31. There's Tony taking the lead for the first time in the race, and then again he comes in for the pit stop. He took the lead again later at lap 67 when Denny Hamlin pitted. and made his final stop from the lead at lap 75, which was interesting because it was 4 laps later than when Casey made his final stop.
And Tony actually pitted. He was about a half a second to a second ahead of Casey and came out after pit stops about a second behind him. And that could be lots of factors, but it might have been that Casey pitted on lap 71, had new tires on longer than Tony did, and his lap times were a little bit quicker, or he could have got caught right behind another car.
We just were a little bit weak on the right-handers toward the end, but you know, we had one segment of the race and one set of tires that we were really good to the right, and then the rest of the day we were about the same on the right-handers. Just couldn't get tight enough. I mean, everybody's doing an awesome job. Everybody with Office Depot and Old Spice Chevy, they're doing a great job. Everybody at Stewart Haas is doing an awesome job. So can't ask anything more from those guys.
How about Marcos Ambrose? The official results show Marcos starting third and finishing third. Not quite that simple. Started at the back after an engine change earlier in the weekend and also a little Saturday practice incident with Jimmy Johnson. Required some damage repair. Moved up to 24th in the opening 13 laps, then pitted under green, trying to get on a different strategy. Catches a caution after he's made his pit stop. Stays out when a lot of other guys stop here and continues to move forward, plus gains spots as others pit under the green. He makes his next stop from third at lap 47. Track position regained when others stop under the caution at lap 55. Marco stays on the track. Makes his final pit stop on the same lap Tony Stewart does. Avoids disaster when he and Bobby Labonte clang off each other exiting pit lane right there. Bobby got the worst end of that. Goes by Jimmy Johnson. I'm sorry, another close call. Watch this one. The pit barrier. Oh, yikes. It doesn't get much closer.
I told you I could make it.
I can tell you what he was doing in the seat.
Closing his eyes. So Marcos hammers out a third-place run from the back of the pack.
We ran a good race. We ran a good strategy. We just got out of all that mess for a while, got some clean traffic, and we just kept piecing ourselves together. When we're on old tyres, I held on, held my track position. When we had good tyres, we moved forward, and it felt like I passed 200 cars today. I know I didn't, but you know, I just ran out of steam at the end to catch Smoke and Casey, but congratulations to them. They were driving great. You know you're on the edge when you're running with those guys and just watching their cars move around, and I'm trying to catch them, and they're a little bit better one spot, I'm better somewhere else, and it was just a lot of fun, and just really proud of my team to let me do this.
Said Kyle, almost like he was from Boston. Another guy with a really interesting day, Jimmy Johnson. Saturday practice damage repaired, starts 11. But when he pits under the green at lap 31, he gets tagged for speeding, dropping the 48 car to 40th. Passes some cars to use some strategy to gain some ground. He pitted under yellow at 55, then again at 72 under green. So got his tires under the caution, then topped off the fuel under green here. At lap number 90, Jimmy has contact. One of about 3 times during the day he had contact with someone. Over the curb.
Not a passing zone.
Yeah.
Hard to turn them things with the front wheels in the air.
And that's not even all the adventure for the 3-time champ.
We got to the curbs, and we're kind of at a spot where we're both side by side, and he had the preferred line, so I was trying to get out of that area and get in behind him. And when I started running over the curbs on the right, I was out of control. Right side tires are off the ground. I couldn't really slow down enough to get in behind him. And when I did, I bumped him, and he was coming right, and I was trying to go left, and unfortunately just turned him into the barriers over there. So, and I felt really bad about it, and I still do. And then I was racing with the 42 after that, and I almost had the same thing happen again. So, I think that's a tricky area to run side by side there, and I was just, I was trying to get that position.
So look at some of the adventures of the top 4 guys. I want to talk about a few things here quickly. First of all, what a day for Marcos Ambrose. That was amazing.
Yeah, there's an easy and a hard way of doing things, and he certainly took the long approach, but made the best of it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just an incredible feat for the whole race team. I mean, that was a new race team this year with some alliance to Michael Waltrip Racing. Marcus come from an incredible road racing background, but he's been doing really well in the Nationwide Series the last couple of years. And a 3rd place finish at Watkins Glen last year in the Wood Brothers car and a 3rd place here, I mean, he's a guy to be reckoned with.
How about his 2 close calls with disaster?
Well,
you can't anticipate that.
That one right there was that got his attention, I can guarantee you. Watch this. Oh!
Goodness, if he'd been another foot farther to the left.
That was one of those ones where you just take a deep, try to.
That was like when you had the little.
Be about 2 inches narrower right
you
there.
turn the wheel to the right as you breathing in.
Well, did you ever have a slot car track where you went through the same area and you had to miss it, otherwise you hit the bridge?
Yeah. and what about the thing with Marcos coming off pit lane and Bobby Labonte coming by? I mean, is it just wrong place, wrong time for somebody?
It absolutely is, and I think that the drivers, again, are always dependent on the spotters, but the spotters can't cover 2 miles of road course, and that's the one place where you're at risk only 4 or 5 times during the day.
Jimmy Johnson, that was a rather adventurous day for the 3-time champ.
It was, but you know, it says that 48 team, they're just relentless. They do not give up. They have setbacks and they fight their way back through. And you know, Jimmy was pretty honest about what he said. Over the curbs there it is. As I said, it is hard to turn those things with the front wheels in the air. And got into Kurt Busch right there. Felt bad about that. Said it almost happened again. Then he was involved in that little 3-wide thing and came back, and they just keep fighting there. Shows why they're 3 times in a row NASCAR champions.
To think that Jimmy, after the pit road speeding penalty, went back to 40th. Marcos started in the back, and they finished 4th and 3rd respectively. You know, I mean,
so much for track position. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, just how hard they worked and how much they had to stay with it to make it happen. You know, to your point.
Ray, something I just want to ask you as a crew chief. As a driver, you sit in a seat and you do whatever the crew chief tells you to do. But paying attention to this, it's hard to run a road course from a crew chief perspective, isn't it? I mean,
well,
it's just
fast as it
everything's
changes.
backwards.
Yeah.
But again, setting up your strategy for a road race event is a little bit easier than an oval because you have less pit stops and you can plan your pit stops. But when something happens that puts you off strategy, then you've got to constantly change and come up with some new way to get that track position back, because when the cars get spread out on a road course, they're spread out over miles, and it's difficult to make that time up without using some kind of a trick, and you can't discount luck. The cautions still have to fall exactly where you need them.
And as you know, and you will now know, we're going to take a whole segment and talk about road course strategy and try and explain how some of these guys use different plans to get to the same result. Still to come as we continue our review of Sunday's Sonoma Special, the tight fight for chase places. Sunday's winner only 3 points outside the cut. We'll have highlights of the Milwaukee day-night doubleheader. Saturday, Carl Edwards showed history does indeed repeat itself. But up next, double file restarts didn't cause the kind of chaos Sunday some were expecting. We'll talk about that in a minute.
NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot. Visit HomeDepot.com. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot. And in part by Quikrete. Visit Quikrete.com. Quikrete, it's what America's made of.
Okay, folks, buckle up. Green flag is back out.
They got to be really careful getting up into this corner right now. They don't run each other over.
The green flag is waving again.
And they are side by side in the front.
Late in the race at Sonoma, 2x2 up the hill.
Casey Kane got on the gas in a hurry as soon as that green flag fluttered. It was almost a drag racing start.
There were 7 restarts during Sunday's race at Sonoma. The man with the fastest car on the restarts was race winner Casey Kane. I guess they determined that through those scoring loops or whatever. Unlike the first 3 restarts where the race leader chose the inside lane going into turn 1, 4 times Casey, when he was leading, chose the outer line with great success. But despite some concerns of possible restart chaos on the road course, they were basically incident-free and exciting.
I think the double file restarts were awesome today, man. It added so much excitement on restarts. It at times just kept changing the race, so it was a pretty cool deal. The restarts, there was a lot of action on those restarts, so I think that made it good for the fans.
You know, it was just frantic, but it really takes like 2 or 3 laps to settle down too. Everyone's just all over each other for a while, but you know, we managed to survive, and we gained a few spots through them too.
They were fun. I thought it were, you know, for me it was great because I make ground every restart, so I can't complain.
It's chaotic. We should go to single file at the end. Everybody's just all for themselves, and it's crazy. There's just cars everywhere.
They worked better than I thought they would, but you know, I think we saw I think a few more incidents because of it, and last time I checked, that's pretty much why we had the double file restart.
Summed it pretty well up there, Jeff. There was a lot of discussion before the race about how chaotic those first couple corners, especially that second turn at the top of the hill, would be with double file restarts late in the race. Why wasn't there more mayhem?
Oh, I think you just got really good race car drivers. Plus, they had themselves all scared to death. Each one of them told them how bad it was going to be. And don't run over me. I'm not going to run over you. And they didn't.
I think you make an excellent point. But it exceeded my expectations because I had seen in years past single file get to the top of the hill, impatience, running over everyone like you spoke of. And then Kurt Busch said just a moment ago that at the end, everybody was for themselves. Well, how's that any different than any other race?
That's what I was going to say. Single file, double file, triple file. There was a lot of action in the back, but it was coming down towards the end.
Interesting thing to me, this corner, top of the hill, didn't see any of the pushing and shoving. But the corner, what was it, turn 7? The one that was at the top of the old, the top of the drag strip there used to be, that was where all the craziness happened, but these corners at the top of the hill was quiet.
Alan, I think what happened here is they were side by side getting up into turn 2. They knew they couldn't run over top of each other. And so when they get down to turn 6 and 7 down there where they got to run on guys might brake a little slower or quicker, then they run over top of them, you know. So it was kind of a speed control device getting up to turn 2.
And they thought that Mike Helton and John Darby didn't have a good view of turn 6 and 7, so they could be a little bit rougher down there.
Yeah, briefly, agree or disagree on why, but the double file restarts made for some very intense racing in the last laps.
I agree. Thought it was fabulous.
I like the drama that it created, the 4 restarts.
I agree.
Okay, next topic. As always in one of these road course races, and it seems particularly at Sonoma, several guys who had decent runs going didn't get good finishes because they got knocked around in the last laps. There's Greg Biffle, turned out of traffic. By the way, that's the aforementioned turn 7.
Because the level of urgency rises later in the race.
Kyle Busch up in that same area, his finish spoiled with 11 to go. 2 laps later, David Reagan and Dale Jr., same spot on the racetrack.
You got to remember one thing, most of these were ruined because someone else helped them ruin them.
Well,
they didn't do it on their own.
Give and take, you know. Right there were people giving hits in the back and people taking them. So
and taking.
Now this actually was in turn 2. That's Patrick Carpentier in the 55 and Casey Mears in the 07. And then coming to the white flag, Mark Martin, Jeff Burton, and Robbie Gordon. Just wasn't a good day for Mark Martin, all told. So, check out some of these numbers. Kyle Busch went from 8th to 40th on lap 61 with his run-in with Hornish and Vickers. Dale Earnhardt Jr. Was among several cars, including David Reagan, that collected damage in the lap 101 wreck. Jr. went from 9th to 35th. Reagan went from 11th to 36th. Good days gone bad in a hurry.
And Alan, a large part, not that many cars get laps down on the road course. So when you have a problem, you go way back. Even late in the race, there's still 35, 40 cars even on the lead lap.
You know, there can't be anything more frustrating for a driver or a team than to race all day and with, 6 laps to go or 9 laps to go, be sitting in the dirt.
Well, you hope what happens is it's on the reciprocal side because the result was everybody goes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. Well, that doesn't do anything for the finishing order at all.
My brakes were fading. My brakes were hot. Was that the excuse you used, Mike?
Hey, I knew I didn't have any grip over the S's, but I still drove in your right rear.
They were fine. They were fine the next corner, but that particular.
The good excuses are coming out.
That's the driver's side of the table. So, time here to look at the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series standings after Sonoma. Tony Stewart continues to lead, 84 points over Jeff Gordon, top 4 unchanged from a week ago. Denny Hamlin up 3 spots to 7th. Mark Martin down 3 to 11th. Juan Pablo Montoya up to 12th, barely, only 3 points ahead of Casey Kane. Going to look at the bubble standings in a minute. Our ESPN.com Sports Nation poll question today is, of the 4 drivers closest to 12th right now, who's got the best chance of making the chase? Those 4 guys. Log on and vote results later in the show. Coming up, points racing, a misnomer for competitors, a foul term for fans. We'll discuss the culture of points racing shortly. But next, the constant shuffle of the standings Sunday as teams use different strategies to try and achieve the same results. How they arrive at those approaches next.
Welcome back to NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot.
Watching a race like Sunday's can be confusing. Guys on different pit stop schedules, shuffling up and down the standings. And we're going to lean on our champion crew chief here, Ray Evernham, to try and explain it for us a little bit, using 3 teams that all finished in the top 5 and all used different strategies to get the same result. Let's start with your buddy Casey Kane. His team made 3 pit stops on the day. Kenny Francis calling him to pit road after he completed lap 33, 54, and 71. How'd they come up with that strategy?
Well, there's some things you have to know. A, how long is the race? 110 laps. Where are you starting? What is the ability of your driver and car to come through traffic if he has to, or stay out front? And how far can you go on a tank of gas? So you start at 110 and you go backwards. Yep. They knew that their tank of fuel would be about 35 laps. They also knew they had a very good car and a driver that had a lot of ability. Now, Kenny planned his race to race the guys up front. He knew that he'd pick a number, he wanted to pit early. The whole thing about road racing is you want to pit early before the caution comes out, so that if once you pit under green, because you won't go a lap down, the track is so big, under green you can pit without going a lap down. You hope just after you pit, the caution comes out and everybody else pits and gives you track position.
And that's how it worked on Casey's final stop. He pitted, caution came out. If only it were that simple as knowing when the cautions were going to come out. Now, Marcos Ambrose, totally different situation, totally different strategy. He pitted after completing lap 12, 41, and 75. Remember, Ambrose started at the back, yet he still came up front, finished 3rd.
Okay, they still had the same 110 laps. They had to know how far their car could go. The only number they were worried about was their last stop, the difference between the last stop and the final lap of the race. So because he had to start at the rear due to an engine change, he pitted early, got out of sequence, and hoped for a caution. This is where those caution histories come. He was hoping for a caution, looked at the race history, and hoped that throughout the race it would put him back on cycle, and it did. He ended up back on cycle, fuel-wise with the leaders, with fresh tires on his car, so he used the cautions and gambling to get him back in track position.
And Frankie Kerr with some good calls there, again, utilizing their situation. Now, another totally different situation, Denny Hamlin in the 11 car. He qualified 24th, and as you see here, they only stopped twice.
Well, Mike Ford, great strategist as a crew chief, figured, okay, had a good car, again, know that they get really good fuel mileage, so he could maybe squeeze 2 stops out of it, less time off track, more time on track. His driver is not known as a great road racer, so he wanted to give him the best track position he can. And if you look at it, he stopped the earliest out of the guys who did finish in the top 5, and that gave him the best track position after everybody else pitted.
So Hamlin wound up with a 5th place result. Now, you can't make all these plans in a vacuum.
No, you can't. That's why it looks good, but I can tell you that those guys are calculating the whole time. They've got a playbook up there. If this happens, we're going to do this. If this happens, we're going to do this. And you see some guys adjust. You know, if you have a problem, a pit road speeding penalty, it could change your whole strategy because you go from the front to the back. And again, it depends how early in the race that happens. But the final number you're looking at, that last run, you want to make sure that you're the first guy that pits.
I hate to disagree with the champion crew chief, but the final number I'm looking at is that finishing order and where they wound up. And for those 3 guys we just looked at, they used totally different strategies to get the same thing, a top 5 finish. Coming up next, 10 races to earn a place in the chase, and the fight for those spots is tight. We look at and discuss those standings. Plus, points racing, not a term most fans like to hear, but one we heard from Juan Pablo Montoya and his team this weekend. We talk points racing next.
First road course action of 2009. This is always a story within a story. Marcos Ambrose qualified 3rd, but they've got a different engine in that machine, so he'll start well in the back today.
Just keep the pendants on it, boys. Have a good strong day. Stay calm.
We're getting set to go. 110 laps. The green flag is out. A good start for Brian Vickers.
Get a really tight 7. Is that where he's beating us the most?
Here comes Kyle Busch right to the back bumper of Vickers. We've got a new leader. Kyle Busch is taking the top spot away.
It's your mark now.
Marcos Ambrose very quick early on. These guys came loaded for bear today.
All right, let's come this time, bud. Let's come this time.
Pit stop for Marcos Ambrose out of the rotation here.
Stick to our plan. Stay out here.
We have about 4 different pit strategies for the race cars out on the speedway right now.
All right, we're going to come this time, Casey. Come this time.
Looks like if you've locked into the lap that you're going to pit on, that's what a lot of these teams have decided to do.
Go, go, take a kick. Haul in, haul in. Car is flying, so we're going to hook you up with 4 tires of fuel.
We've got a new leader, Robbie Gordon.
Want to come or not? We can pit this time if we want. We can pit this time. Trouble. Sanders Jr. Smith.
Kyle Busch has been spun.
Something's all bent up. Day's over.
Robbie Gordon just got burned by that caution. Stayed out way too long.
Damn it, Kurt. You told me come by one more time. I was already in the corner. Just lost the race, dude. I was going to come with them. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I screw myself every year at this race. If I was a sidekick, we would have done it. Don't talk to me no more, please.
This plays beautifully into Casey Kane's hands. Now he's the leader. Casey Kane hasn't run particularly well here. Today it's been a different story.
You guys gave me the best car I've ever had out here. I know that. Certainly feels good.
Casey Kane trying tenaciously to hang on. Tony Stewart's Chevy 3 car lengths back.
The way the car is, just drive it like you stole it.
Marcus Ambrose watching it all unfold.
Who's that handsome fellow on the screen? That's you, buddy. Big smile. What are you doing watching TV while you're out there?
Casey Kane pulls away from Tony Stewart.
Hold him a couple car lengths there. Keep driving out the front windshield. You're doing good. Keep focused.
Stewart not even close enough to force Casey to be aggressive.
Casey Kane's road course woes are over.
Woo! We won a road course race. Unbelievable. Not too bad from a dirt tracker from Washington.
Casey Kane gets Richard Petty Motorsports to victory lane.
Oh, car. Thanks, guys. That was unreal.
So as a result of all we've talked about so far from the Sonoma race, here are the bubble standings for that 12th place cutoff to get into the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. Juan Pablo Montoya got himself up into that 12th spot, 3 points ahead of Casey Kane. Only 140 separate the 8th and 16th place drivers in the championship. And time for Hot Laps now. Let's tackle a couple topics that will get kicked around in the garage areas and team shops this week. First of all, the chase and the bubble standings. Kyle Busch and Mark Martin have the most wins this year, 3 apiece, right? Both are bubble drivers right now. Mark is only 12 points ahead of 13th place Casey Kane. Kyle Busch only 48 points ahead in the chase. I think most of us assumed starting the year Kyle would be a chase driver. Is there a chance he could miss this thing?
There's a real chance. I mean, there's a possibility. And I think that there obviously needs to be more emphasis put on winning. Kyle Busch is leading the standings. If the chase starts right now, you've got to put emphasis on winning.
Come on, Ricky, you got to put a little emphasis on not running over people, too. I mean, come on. Kyle Busch was not points racing. He was not trying to make sure he was in the championship hunt at Sonoma. And we've seen some guys race a little different. And you got to get to that chase, Ray.
Yeah, and the emphasis needs to be put on how competitive NASCAR really is. If you think about it, you just said the guys that have won the most races are really the bubble drivers. 48 points is not a lot. He can't have mechanical failures. He can't have flat tires. So he's got to control what he can control. But the things that he can't control, last year in the chase, they had mechanical problems. Boom, took him out of the chase. Could easily take him out of a chase spot right now if they're not careful.
You mentioned the term points racing. We heard that term over the weekend from some people like Juan Pablo Montoya and his team, for example. Points racing is a garage term, but I think when a driver uses the phrase points racing, it's a turnoff to fans. Agree or disagree?
I agree with that. It's kind of a turn off to fans, it's a turn off to me. We've all had to do it, and when you say you're points racing, winning the race is not the most important thing on your mind. Winning the big race, which is the championship, is what they're after. But when you do use the term points racing, you're maybe saying, look, I'm not going to put it all out on the line to win today.
And maybe a better term for it would be, points racing is a garage term. That's where it came from originally. Smart racing, considering the championship rules, might be a better term that might be less offensive. If you could, how would you tweak the championship rules now to take away that hesitation to let it fly and go in?
Yeah, fans want to hear, crew members want to hear that I was going for the win. And that's something I like about Kyle Busch. And you're going to run over a few guys doing that, going for the win. So I would take the top 12 drivers who have won a race, regardless of where they are in standings, and that would be my chase.
Well, it's getting too complex anymore. We want to keep changing these chase rules. One of the two, we're just going to have a champion, or we're going to have the chase. We're going to have the final 12, and it's paid off for consistency for years. You're in the top 12. Or get rid of the points with 12 to go, and everybody's entitled to the championship. The championship is such a big deal.
But you got to put emphasis on winning. That's what the fans want. They loved the last 10 laps of the All-Star race. Give them what they want. Give them a 100-point bonus to win. Whatever it takes to get the guy running second to go for it.
It's the great racing tradition. Don't like it? Change the rule. Up next, a preview of Sunday's New Hampshire race for the Sprint Cup Series. Mother Nature had a hand in last June's outcome. Remember that? We will talk about what to expect on the Magic Mile. But first, the Kyle and Carl Show in the Nationwide Series. This time it was the Carl and Kyle Show. Milwaukee highlights coming up.
You're watching NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot.
Saturday, the NASCAR Nationwide Series ran 250 miles at the Milwaukee Mile. You were there, Ray, right?
Yes, I was there.
Help me with this highlight here. No travel complications for the two title hopefuls. Both Kyle Busch and Carl Edwards arrived in time for the start. They'll both started in the back since someone else qualified their cars. Eric Darnell led the field to the green.
He did.
He led a young charge by the young Roush guys.
You know, the Roush cars were fast. Ricky Stenhouse, a young guy that we hadn't heard a lot about in the 16 car. Darnell was fast. Kyle Busch and Carl Edwards were working their way kind of quietly through the field.
This caution was the first of the race. Just before halfway, Kyle went from third to first on the pit stop. Little boost from his pit crew. He builds a lead of over 3 seconds. Then we start seeing this from behind the car, which coincides with Carl Edwards closing the gap from 3 seconds behind Kyle to 1 second behind Kyle to this.
And when Carl got to the lead, it's like he found another gear. He was, we never knew how good he was until he got to the front, and it was obvious he was going to win.
Well, Ricky, if you'd have been watching me on the race, I would have explained a little bit about what was going on with those sparks.
I was listening.
All right, so Carl drove away to his first win of the Nationwide Series season. At the same place he scored his first win last year, the first of 7, by the way, a year ago. We'll see how that plays out. He only gained 10 points on Kyle this time. 127 headed to New Hampshire this weekend. Brad Keselowski, another great run, but he's trying to hang with the top 2 where points are concerned. So, Carl Edwards has been basically getting outrun by Kyle Busch all season so far. He gets that win and outruns Kyle Saturday night. How big was that for him and why?
Well, I think it was a huge turnaround. If you remember at Kentucky, they were horrible at Kentucky. Now they come around, drove past Kyle Busch, the whole Gibbs organization. It isn't just driver versus driver. It's team versus team. Gibbs versus Roush. That's what it's about.
And the longer you go into the season winless, it starts to work against you. The fact that we're in June and he hadn't won yet, it's time.
You know, I almost feel guilty about talking about Kyle and Carl so much. They've been the show.
They were the show, but what was encouraging about that race, there were a lot of young names up front. Ricky Stenhouse, Eric Darnell, Stephen Light, Stephen Wallace. All of a sudden, all these guys under 25 years of age had a really, really good run. I know that Kyle and Carl are the show, but keep your eyes out and ears out for those names.
Nationwide Series at New Hampshire Saturday afternoon, telecast on ABC. Rain on Friday night that closed O'Hare Airport for a while and closed the road between there and Milwaukee for a while. Forced postponement of the Camping World Truck Series race, setting up a day-night doubleheader that didn't involve the Brewers on Saturday. It was an afternoon race. Matt Crafton led the points coming in. Todd Bodine led the second most laps. But Ron Hornaday in that 33 was the show. Led 180 of the 200 laps in the Harvick's 33. Handful of restarts, no problem for Ron.
Ron Hornaday is, as they've always said, is the restart expert. And his KHI trucks there just run so good on these flat racetracks. Not just flat racetracks, everywhere anymore.
And Mark Martin's, I mean, Ron Hornaday, those guys are amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, did you know 50 is the new 30?
Is it really?
Yeah, it is.
Can it be the new 40?
Well, not only did he get himself a win on his birthday, but he took the championship lead as well in the Camping World Truck Series. 36 ahead of Crafton, with Bodine and Skinner not all that far behind trucks at Memphis this Saturday night. Coming up next on the Monday Roundtable edition of NASCAR Now, what to look for and watch for when the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series races on the Magic Mile in New Hampshire this coming Sunday. On Tuesday's NASCAR Now show, 5 Eastern Time, ESPN2, the Sonoma winner, Casey Kane, will join us, as well as Matt Kenseth. Check it out, 5 Eastern on Tuesday. The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series at New Hampshire this Sunday. Kurt Busch's team made the right call to not pit just before it started raining last June. That makes Kurt the defending champion of Sunday's 301-lap race, or scheduled 301-lap race. It ended at, about 284 last year. Checking out some numbers, Denny Hamlin leads all active drivers with a 7th place career average at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. 6 starts, 1 win, 5 top 10s. Martin Truex Jr., Jimmy Johnson also got good averages there. Jeff Burton leads all drivers with 4 victories at the Magic Mile. Talk about New Hampshire. Ricky Craven starts doing this, a track you know and love well. For both of our drivers here, what's the challenge of New Hampshire for a driver?
The challenge has always been that it's a flat track, and these big, heavy cars don't like flat racetracks. It's about getting through the middle as fast as you can, forward bite off the corner. And Denny Hamlin always comes to mind when we talk about flat tracks.
Well, I'd like to add a lot to what Ricky just said, but he laid it out what you got to do, you know, and the end result is just running good there. Your car always turning in the middle of the corner, being able to drive straight up off of it.
Strategy for track position. We talked about it a lot where Sonoma's concerned. It's a pretty big deal at New Hampshire, too.
It is, and New Hampshire is one of the tracks historically that you'll see guys take 2 tires or no tires. Tires don't seem to be as critical there as they are at other places that we go, and it's more important to get some fuel, get out front, get right side tires only, get out front. A lot of races have been won there with no tires or just right side tires.
Agree or disagree? One of the tracks that qualifying is so very critical at, but one of the toughest places to lay down a good qualifying lap.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because
come on, help me out here.
Well, because the cars actually drive better, and Mike, you can appreciate this. The cars actually drive better on older, warmer tires. When you go out to do your qualifying lap, you have to drive down in there knowing that these are cold tires. It's going to be edgy, but if you don't put some heat into them, you're going to have a real rough turn 1.
Yeah, I think what happens, you try to drive the car so far down in the corner on your qualifying lap that it kind of loads the front of the car, unloads the back of the car, makes it feel like it's going to get loose. You try to cover that up, start sliding the front end.
It's not a comfortable lap.
It's only like 4 things you do before you get to the center of the corner.
Yeah.
And
it feels messy.
Yeah.
All right, quick picks.
Oh boy, I can't go against the numbers. Denny Hamlin, you know, they're coming off a top 5 finish. I feel like Denny and Mike could get some magic this weekend.
There you go.
I'm going with the almighty momentum number right now, which is number 14, Tony Stewart. I mean, he's leading the points, and got to go for it.
Flat track, Denny Hamlin. He's exceptional. Has the history on his side.
So Denny Hamlin. 2 Denny Hamlins, 1 Tony Stewart.
I'll probably win.
I'll take the other 41 in the field, and we'll talk about it next Monday. All right, that's New Hampshire. This coming Sunday, new safety fence between the grandstand and the racetrack, by the way, and a lot of work done in the infield as Bruce Smith continues to make his mark there. Up next, news and notes, poll results, and final thoughts.
NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot. Visit HomeDepot.com. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot. And in part by Pizza Hut. Introducing the new Big Eat Tiny Price menu. Now you're eating America's favorite pizza, Pizza Hut.
An hour's not enough to contain this program. As soon as we're done here on ESPN2, flip over to ESPN News. Ray, Mike, and Ricky and I will talk a little bit more about Casey Kane's win on Sunday in Sonoma. ESPN News right after our roundtable show here is finished. And a little bit of baseball. The ALLL Showdown presented by State Farm. Albert Pujols. Boy, is he on a hitting streak. He takes the Cardinals into New York to open a 4-game series against the Mets. That's tonight at 7 Eastern on ESPN2. Wednesday night baseball presented by Smirnoff Ice, the Yankees and Braves. Coming up as well. That's Wednesday, ESPN2 at 7 Eastern time. A couple quick news and notes. Brad Keselowski going to meet this week with Rick Hendrick to discuss a potential move to Cup in 2010. Rick did mention a couple of options when he discussed that on Sunday. Bernie Lamar has been released by Braun Racing. Team will have a separate announcement on which drivers will replace Bernie. And Ryan Newman and Casey Kane going to run the Whelen Modified Series race, the New England 100 at New Hampshire on Saturday. As a longtime modified fan, I say great deal. I'm also not their Cup team owner. And the Sports Nation poll question we asked of the 4 drivers closest to 12th who has the best chance of making this year's chase. 56% of you went with the hot guy. It said Casey Kane will be the one to make that happen.
Well, that's good. You know, even though I don't own any more of that team, I do still have a good friendship with Casey Kane. But, boy, just got to be careful because don't give up on the Richard Childress cars yet.
Yeah. Keeping an eye on that. Mm-hmm. All right. You were his team owner. Would you let him run that modified race?
Oh, boy.
You'd have to talk about it a long time,
yeah,
wouldn't you?
He said no earlier. I heard him say that.
The fact that he's never done it, I don't
But I'm not. I'll tell you what. I'm not his team owner anymore, so I think it's great too. You know?
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that. All right, final thoughts. What's on your mind?
Excited. I'm going to Loudon this weekend. I'm going to run the nationwide race and the Cup race.
Final thoughts for me, Casey Kane deserves a lot of credit. You know, I mean, I think that this win puts him in a special category. And in my mind, if I look back at him winning 9 races over the last 3.5 years, I think this kid's underrated. I think he's very, very good and deserves more attention than what he's getting.
And following up on that poll question of those guys that are closest but outside the chase, who would be your favorite to make it? Casey?
David Rudiman.
David Rudiman.
Because he's been fast all year long, and that's the hardest part of this business, is to have that speed.
Well, I have to go. David Rudiman's doing a good job this year.
Well, again, as I said before, I'm pulling for Casey, but, you know, you can't count the Childress cars out. And, you know,
and
I
the fact that you never agree with me, right?
Well, I know. We agreed accidentally on the Hamlin thing, so I hate that. But the and noticing that Casey did a great job, because he did. He drove a flawless race, and I really do think this kid is much better than he's shown. But as far as what to look for, we saw a great flat track race at Milwaukee, and I think that they're getting these cars better. NASCAR is doing a better job with the COT, and Goodyear's doing a better job with the tire. I think we're going to see a good race this weekend at Loudon.
Is anybody else here with me hoping that we can find some way to reflect in the official results of a race that, like, Marcos Ambrose didn't start third, he started last and finished third? You know, I mean, it's been that way forever, I know, but
Marcos Ambrose started last and finished third.
we did it here. And by the way, Ricky listens better than most of my questions. That's why I threw you that curveball before. Nice job. ESPN News in a couple minutes. Casey Kane tomorrow.